men, like, I don't understand. You oftentimes don't even realize that there's trans men, for example. You also don't know anything about biology. You don't recognize that there's like intersex people, for example. God forbid you even try to consider that. Your brain is going to explode. And you become increasingly more agitated and you start talking about this, right? You start talking about it all the time. Maybe even you think that you're making a brave position, like you're taking a stance, you're putting your foot down. Society has to stop with this nonsense. Happens to a lot of people. And it becomes increasingly harder to pull you out of that turf brain once you have like reached terminal velocity of turf brain. And I think Nick is just slowly but surely going through the steps. And he's at like he's pretty deeply invested in the transphobia stuff at this point, because he went from like, oh, live and live, brother. I don't really care. Like the gay stuff, it wears me out, but like who gives a shit, to like, using the term, the T word, right? I'm not going to say it because technically a slur, and also I don't want to get banned. But, he has like increasingly agitated himself to constantly talk about this. This should not occupy your mind at all. Like not even a little bit. To Nick Mercs, I say, Nick, brother, there are a million things that happen in the world that you don't understand. This is another one of them. If you obsess this much over any number of those things, like math, for example, or the fact that Spartans were pedophiles, despite the fact that you have them as your logo. Like there's so much stuff in the world that you don't understand. Every day of the week, things are happening and you can't make sense of it at all. Why occupy your brain to this degree? Why get this mad? Just leave it alone, brother. Leave it alone. If you can't comprehend it, just leave it alone. Leave trans people alone. Stop talking about trans people. I promise it's good for your career. I promise it's good for your mental health. Like it's just good across the board. It makes no sense, So that's my take for people that are just like not realizing that they're entering this like dangerous area. Dangerous in the sense that it's like not just dangerous for your financial prospects, because you're being like a hateful person. And before you realize it, you become more and more invested in this hatred. And like for even normal people who also might agree with you in terms of like, being weirded out by trans people existing or whatever, even they think you're weird because they're like, okay, bro, like chill out. Nobody wants to hear you talk about trans people every day. Okay, that's it. Turf brain is so wild to me because like, how do you look at someone chilling literally often within the binary of societal gender norms, and somehow they're all mentally unwell the whole time? They're done full crackhead mode, looking like Charlie Day on a stringboard meme. Yeah, Sancho V's had a really funny take though. I liked it. I loved it. Banned for using the T word on Twitch. Apparently that's a derogatory term. Next time I'll use a mental health disorder. Nick, mate, I think I speak on behalf of everybody when I say the only LGBT we support is lager, Greg's, beans and toast. The hell with these woke tossers. Chin up, shoulder back, a couple stellas, and you'll be live again before you know it. Love from Plymouth. This is not an actual oi, bro. It's Sancho V's chat. He's memeing. Why do you think he isn't gone, completely gone on the turf side? Oh no, he is. He has like deteriorating transphobia brain. He's already on like a later stage of it where he's constantly talking about trans people and like actually incurring like financial punishments for it at this point. The next stage is basically when you start transvestigating people. Once you're in the transvestigation stage, that's my favorite stage, by the way, of transphobia. You become completely insane. You're like hallucinating. You're seeing trans people in every corner. You start suspecting people that are otherwise cis of being trans, and then legitimately always transvestigating people around them, talking about their experience, about how like they think the cash register, the cashier at like their local Ralph's is actually trans, and how that like fucked up their day. So yeah, how you know all that? Because I'm an advocate, and also I don't know. I mean, I do political commentary, and I try to get people to not have certain positions and see a different alternative viewpoint almost professionally, I would say. And as a consequence of that, I've seen so many different variants of this kind of attitude throughout my professional career. So I would say I'm a little bit knowledgeable about it, maybe not the most knowledgeable, but pretty knowledgeable overall. The truth is that gender is a spectrum. It's not a binary, and it's a social construct, and gender norms throughout time have changed. Gender norms right now are different from culture to culture. That's why if you look at like what is like a sexy man, for example, in Korea, is entirely different. It's like way more androgynous, way more feminine in comparison to what is considered as like a sexy man in the United States of America or in the Western world. And Obviously, like the things that we wear or our hairstyle, things like that have changed as well. If you look at the founding fathers, they were wearing powdered wigs, they would put makeup on, rosy cheeks, they were dressed up gay as hell. So all of that stuff is malleable and changes dramatically throughout time, and even is different even in the same time, right? So when you falsely make the assertion that like gender and sex, I guess, which is also not binary, are exactly the same and these are like impossible to remove from one another, you're operating on a complete falsehood. You're operating on wrong information, either faulty information or incomplete information. And that's the reason why people become transvestigators, because ultimately you don't know if someone is trans or not. Like, you just genuinely don't know. You might be able to tell sometimes, but ultimately that's going to lead you into being really rude if you're constantly obsessing over like, is this a trans woman or is this cis woman? What's going on here? Like, because that's the reality. That's the reality that's the reality of how gender works. And because gender is not as black and white or as simple as the way people try to understand it or the way that people try to reinforce it, you ultimately end up thinking that a whole bunch of cis women are actually trans women. That's it. And vice versa. Does that make sense? Let's be honest. When did you think of an assumption and it was wrong and then you corrected it? Great question. I had transphobic opinions. So there you go. Many, many years ago, I grew up in Turkey. I think I had like traumatic experiences walking home with like seeing trans sex workers, and it scared me. And I think that is something that kind of stuck with me. And I had some transphobic opinions, which is normal. A lot of people are transphobic. Trans people are transphobic before they realize they're trans. It's an unfortunate byproduct of our social conditioning. So yeah, that's actually one issue that I'm very open about. Do you think some people can't come back once the brain is so broken? No, I think all people can come back. All people can come back, no matter what. And even if someone is like impossible to change the minds on, you shouldn't give up hope on changing their minds in general. The only exception I make is like people that professionally do this. Those people are getting a bag by behaving like this. You know what I mean? So those people most likely are not going to come back from it because their money relies on them behaving this way.